What if the more you talk about your plans, the less real they become? And what if that urge to explain yourself, to announce your next move, to show progress before it even exists, isn't confidence at all, but a subtle betrayal of your own potential? Carl Jung once said, asterisk, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Asterisk, but here's the part most people miss. When you expose your inner world too early, when you speak about your transformation before it has taken root, you interrupt the very process that could change your life. We live in a world that rewards noise. It teaches you to speak, to post, to declare, to prove. But Jung's philosophy points in a completely different direction. Real transformation is quiet. It is internal. It is often invisible. And because of that, it is powerful. So here's the paradox. The less you feel the need to show, the more real your growth becomes. If you already feel that there's something deeper in you that doesn't need constant validation, subscribe to the channel now, because this space is for those who are ready to evolve beyond appearances. And as you watch this, I want you to commit to something. Write in the comments, I move in silence. Not for me, but as a signal to yourself that something is about to change. Now imagine two people. One of them talks about everything. He shares his goals, his plans, his struggles. He explains why he's going to succeed. He posts about discipline, about growth, about becoming better. The other one disappears. No announcements, no explanations, no noise. Months pass. The first one is still talking, still planning, still explaining. The second one returns, and something about him is different. His presence is heavier, his mind sharper, his energy contained. He doesn't say much, but he doesn't need to. What happened between them? Jung would say the first man scattered his psychic energy outward. He fed the world with unfinished pieces of himself. The second man did the opposite. He contained that energy. He allowed it to descend, to mature, to transform him from the inside out. Because when you speak too soon, you don't just share your plans, you dilute them. There is something almost dangerous about premature expression. The moment you announce a goal, your mind starts to believe that part of it is already accomplished. You receive a small hit of validation, a sense of identity that hasn't been earned yet, and slowly, without realizing, your hunger fades. Jung describes something similar through the concept of the persona, the mask you present to the world. The more you talk about who you want to become, the more you risk identifying with the image, instead of doing the work required to embody it. And this is where most people get trapped. They become performers of growth instead of practitioners of transformation. Let me ask you something honestly. How many times have you said you were going to change and then didn't? How many times did talking about it feel almost as satisfying as actually doing it? If that question hit you, don't ignore it. Comment below. No more empty words. That moment of honesty is where real change begins. Now, to understand why silence is so powerful, you need to understand something fundamental in Jung's work. Transformation happens in the unconscious, not in public, not in performance, but in solitude, in reflection, in confrontation with the parts of yourself you usually avoid. Jung called this process individuation, the path of becoming who you truly are. And it is not loud. It is not glamorous. It is often uncomfortable because it forces you to face your shadow, the hidden, repressed, unacknowledged parts of your psyche. And here's the truth most people don't want to hear. You cannot confront your shadow while performing for an audience. Silence becomes necessary, not as a form of weakness, but as a form of protection. Because when you are silent, you are no longer distracted by how you are perceived. You begin to observe yourself more clearly. You start to notice your impulses, your insecurities, your patterns. And slowly, something changes. You stop reacting. You start understanding. And understanding creates control. But silence is not just psychological. It is also strategic. When you talk too much, you reveal your intentions. You expose your timing. You make yourself predictable. But when you remain silent, something interesting happens. People project onto you. They try to interpret you. They reveal themselves in the process. And without saying much, you learn everything. Jung believed that what is unconscious in others often becomes visible through projection. When you are silent, you become a mirror, and people show you who they are. That is power. Now let's go deeper. There are different ways people break their own silence, and each one comes with cost. Some people feel the need to explain everything. They justify every decision, every change, every move. Deep down, they are not seeking clarity. They are seeking approval. Others constantly announce their goals. They feel a rush when they talk about what they're going to do, but that rush replaces action. And then there are those who cannot tolerate being unseen. They need to be noticed in the process. They need recognition before results. All of these patterns point to the same issue: dependence on the external world. And anything that depends on the external is unstable. Silence breaks that dependency. It forces you to become self-contained. But let's be very clear, this path is not easy. Because when you choose silence, you also choose to give up immediate validation. You choose to be misunderstood. You choose to let go of the comfort that comes from being seen trying, and replace it with the discomfort of actually doing the work. And that's where most people quit. Not because they're incapable, but because they are addicted to being noticed. So here's the real question. Can you build something meaningful without anyone watching? If you feel resistance right now, that's normal. But it's also a sign that your growth has been tied to external recognition for too long. And that can change. The path is simple, but not easy. First, you learn to work in silence. That means you stop announcing your plans. You stop explaining your process. You redirect your energy inward. You build structure without needing applause. Then, you learn to reflect in silence. Whether you call it prayer, introspection, or self-dialogue, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you create space to observe yourself honestly. No performance. No filters. Jung himself spent years in deep introspection, documenting his inner experiences in what later became known as the Red Book. To the outside world, he seemed distant, but internally, he was reconstructing his entire psyche. That is the kind of work that changes a life. And finally, you learn to win in silence, not by hiding your success, but by not needing to announce it. Your results speak. Your presence communicates. Your transformation becomes visible without explanation. And when that happens, something shifts. People notice, but they can't fully understand because they didn't see the process. They only see the result, and that creates impact. If you made it this far, you're already ahead of most people. So take a second. Subscribe now if you haven't yet, because what we're building here is not entertainment. It's transformation. Now, before we close, you need to understand one more thing. Silence is powerful, but it must be intentional. If you use silence to avoid growth, it becomes isolation. If you use it to suppress emotions, it becomes tension. But if you use it to observe, to build, to transform, it becomes strength. So here's your challenge. For the next 30 days, reduce unnecessary speech. Stop announcing plans. Avoid pointless arguments. Observe more than you react. Build more than you explain. And watch what happens to your mind. You'll notice less noise, more clarity, more control. This is not motivation. This is psychological repositioning, and it changes everything. So before you leave, write this in the comments. I build, reflect, and win in silence. Let that be your starting point. And remember this, the world listens to those who speak loudly, but it respects those who don't need to, because in the end, those who master silence don't just change themselves, they change reality without ever asking for attention.